On today's broadcast, the president accepts Prosecutor General Chae Dong-wook's resignation amid suspicions he fathered an extramarital son. Seoul's foreign minister urges North Korea to scrap nuclear weapons at the UN General Assembly, and Seoul and Beijing will join hands on issues of Japan's wartime crimes. This is KBS World Radio News. I'm Bruce Harrison. President Park Geun-hye has accepted Prosecutor General Chae Dong-wook's resignation. Presidential Chief Public Relations Secretary Lee Jung-hyun told reporters on Saturday that Park agreed to the Justice Ministry's recommendation to accept the resignation. The PR aide said the decision was unavoidable in order to prevent South Korea's prosecutor's office from becoming any more unstable, as its chief position has been in effect vacant following Chae's offer to resign. He also said the president wants Chae to clarify suspicions he had a child through an extramarital affair and clear himself of such allegations. Chae offered his resignation a week after the Chosun Ilbo reported earlier this month that he allegedly had the child, but the president waited about 2 weeks before making a decision. Chae refused to cooperate with the Justice Ministry's investigation following his offer to resign. The ministry said Friday it found contradictions to his denial of the allegations in its probe. An official said the Justice Ministry's investigation is in its final phase and more facts will be revealed through the legal process over the national suspicion. The ruling Saenuri Party called for swiftly normalizing the operations of the prosecution after the president's acceptance of Chae Dong-wook's resignation. Ruling party floor spokeswoman Representative Min Hyun-ju told reporters it is natural for the presidential office to replace a head prosecutor whose ethics are being questioned. She also warned against speculations the presidential office tried to remove the chief prosecutor, saying such suspicions are not properly focused on the essence of the matter. The main opposition Democratic Party concentrated on suspicions the administration was not content with Chae, who indicted the former National Intelligence Service chief on charges of violating election law by allegedly meddling in last year's presidential election. DP spokeswoman Representative Bae Jae-jung said it's doubtful the president's decision was not based upon a prepared scenario to get rid of the chief prosecutor. The spokeswoman also said the public will not accept the president's decision before the facts of the case are defined. Seoul's foreign minister Yoon Byung-se says South Korea is ready to help North Korea if the communist regime abandons its nuclear weapons development program. Speaking at the UN General Assembly in New York on Friday, Yoon pledged his government will help North Korea if it gives up plans to simultaneously pursue economic development and nuclear armament. The foreign minister urged Pyongyang to come up with concrete actions for genuine change. Yoon also called for unified efforts by the international community to press the North to give up its nuclear program, stressing the need to prevent another nuclear state from coming into existence. The foreign minister also used the opportunity to denounce Pyongyang for abruptly canceling a planned inter-Korean reunion event for about 100 families separated by the Korean War. The reunions were initially scheduled to begin this week. Yoon called the abrupt, unilateral cancellation of the family reunions inhumane and urged North Korea to ease the agony of Koreans by holding the event as soon as possible. The South Korean foreign minister also spoke about victims of wartime sex slavery at the United Nations General Assembly in an apparent response to the Japanese Prime Minister's sidestepping of their sufferings in his assembly address. The foreign minister also discussed Japan's wartime wrongdoings with his Chinese counterpart at a meeting in New York. Our Kim Bum-soo has more.
Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se has called for measures to restore the honor of women forced into wartime sex slavery. In his speech at the UN General Assembly on Friday, the top diplomat touched on the issue, saying the victims of sex crimes over the past century are still suffering from their wounds. The foreign minister did not specify Japan's wartime crimes during his UN speech, but he later made it clear his words were directed at Japan's sex slavery. After speaking to the UN Assembly, the foreign minister told South Korean reporters Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's UN speech a day earlier was insufficient for not addressing the so-called comfort women issue. In his speech, Abe ignored the pain suffered by women forced to serve as sex slaves for the Japanese military during World War II. Abe ironically stressed women's rights, mentioning sex crimes committed in global conflict zones. With Abe trying to avoid the past, the South Korean foreign minister discussed the thorny issue with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the UN Assembly. The two ministers are said to have agreed to join hands to sternly deal with Japan as they believe the island nation is not sincerely dealing with historical issues related to its war crimes. Kim Bum-soo, KBS World Radio News.
Japan's Kyodo News reports the South Korean and Japanese governments do not believe they can hold a bilateral summit next month on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, meeting in Bali. Citing Japanese government sources, the news agency said the two neighbors' foreign ministers failed to narrow gaps on issues regarding history and the Dokdo Islets and create an environment conducive for talks. President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are also scheduled to attend next month multilateral gatherings of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and a tripartite meeting of South Korea, China, and Japan in Brunei. But sources have suggested bilateral Seoul-Tokyo talks are unlikely to play out on the sidelines. The U.S. Defense Chief says there is no deadline for talks on Seoul's request to delay the transfer of wartime operational control, or OPCON, to South Korean forces. U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel told reporters Friday the request will be discussed next week when he meets with South Korean Defense Minister Kim Kwon-jin in Seoul. Hagel said there is no deadline and he does not expect any decisions to be made regarding the transfer at the upcoming meeting. The defense secretary is scheduled to leave for Seoul this weekend ahead of the annual security consultative meeting between South Korea and the U.S. This will be Hagel's first trip to South Korea since he took over as the head of the Pentagon. The current administration has cited increased threats from North Korea as the reason for wanting to postpone the OPCON transition, which is scheduled for December 2015. Samsung Electronics has offered remedies to settle a European Union investigation of potential antitrust regulation violations by the South Korean company. EU Competition Commissioner Joaquin Almunia said Friday in New York that Samsung expressed hope to end the probe and agreed to offer commitments its proposal will be market-tested. Details of the remedies have not yet been disclosed, though. In December, the EU accused Samsung of antitrust violations for raising patent issues against competitors on some of its standards' essential patents. The company dropped a number of injunction requests against Apple on the patents in Europe as the Commission brought charges last year. But the EU has still called for more concessions from Samsung.